Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda. That's my Halloween one.
Woo, spooky.
Okay. Well, thank you, David. Hello, and welcome to all our listeners from wherever you're coming from and joining us on the Feeling Good podcast. This is episode 478, and we have a really wonderful guest today, Angela Krumm. Hi, Angela.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Hi,
And
Angela.
Angela is the director of professional development, and she's also a co-founder at the Feeling Good Institute. FGI provides treatment using TEAM CBT as well as impeccable training to other therapists who want to learn these powerful methods. Angela's worked as a licensed counseling psychologist for nearly 2 decades and enjoys using TEAM CBT principles in her own life, which we're going to hear about today. She likes working with adults with various struggles, and she probably could work with anyone who wants to deal with any challenge in their life. But she has a special affinity for working with folks struggling with social anxiety, phobias, and panic disorder, as well as those wanting to make lifestyle changes to improve their health. So it's definitely a pleasure and an honor to have you, Angela.
Thank you, Rhonda. It makes me, hearing you say I've been practicing for nearly 2 decades and remembering it was so early in my practice, I got to meet Dr. Burns and get involved in this community. And it sure transformed how I think about therapy and how I enjoy it because it works. And it's just always a joy to get to join you on the podcast and talk about TEAM CBT.
You were on the podcast before in episode 270. And on that podcast, you were talking about your journey in learning about better eating habits. And because you were learning about better eating habits and working with your habits and addictions, you were able to lose weight, which was not 100% your goal, but that became a positive consequence. And today we're talking about relapse.
Mm-hmm.
And then going to be teaching about relapse prevention through your own journey.
Right. Yeah. Is it helpful if I give just a bit of a refresher of the story? Yeah. So for people who haven't heard or don't recall, it was episode 2, podcast 270. And it was quite a long time ago, almost over 3 years ago now, that I had really gone through a number of really stressful, hard things over the course of a year. My father had died with a pretty short duration from diagnosis to death. And I'd had a concussion and various life stressors. And I had just kind of fallen off being thoughtful about how I was taking care of myself. And I've always been someone who's exercised. And so had kind of a broad sense of like healthiness at any weight was fine. But I was starting to see some really concerning changes. And with a family history of type 2 diabetes, it kind of freaked me out, to be honest, to put it bluntly, when I noticed I wasn't even recognizing myself in photos at my sister's wedding, where it's like, who's that? Oh, wait, that's me. Like I couldn't even recognize my body anymore from this distant perspective. And I really had a wake up call from a health perspective that I was kind of on track to have some serious consequences if I didn't get things under control. So it was an example of a time that TEAM CBT shows how for lay people and for therapists, how powerful it is and how we need to use the tools and methods. And so in that podcast, we talked about my journey and how I used TEAM CBT, and we did some teaching, right, of these steps that it can take to really turn around a habit that you want to change. It was such a fun podcast to kind of celebrate the journey I'd been on. And we talked about setting process versus outcome goals. We talked about tracking to help with accountability. And then, of course, David's amazing tools of the triple paradox, where you honor all of the good things about the status quo, right? The advantages of the habit, the disadvantages of the change, and the good things the current habit shows about you. And that's such an important motivational tool. We talked about how transformative that was for me. And then, of course, using the habit addiction log and the devil's advocate technique to talk back to tempting thoughts and really generate powerful self-control thoughts to help you fight the temptations in the moment. That was all really transformative. But guess what? As you can imagine, I'm here today. I, like most humans, am imperfect. So I humbly confess to the podcast world that I relapsed, which honestly, when I realized the relapse was happening, I thought of you all often and felt some shame and embarrassment, imagining people who'd been inspired and listened to my podcast, maybe feeling disappointed or, disappointed in the fact that I had slipped up after setting this great example.
How long did it take before you began relapsing?
It was longer than usual, David. I was really solid in using the methods for a long time and following my process. I was trying to look at kind of my logs because it was the end of 2021 that we did that podcast, and I'd already made a lot of changes. And it was about 2 years that I was really successful. And then I think part of what happened is I started getting a little overconfident and stopped using the methods that had worked for me initially. And it was a slippery slope.
What methods were you using on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, that's a really important question. For me, the tracking what I was eating had become a really important process goal. We'd talked in that episode about, some people set a goal of, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. And I always found that dangerous or concerning, because then what happens when you hit 10, right? Do you just go back to the way it was before? Do you rebound? So my goal had been to log my food every day and to choose my foods according to the log. And what I mean by that is I would allocate what was a really reasonable, healthy amount of calories for my body size, nothing punishing and really intense. And then as long as I logged my food, I could be really flexible and enjoy my treats or enjoy a glass of wine at the end of the day, if in fact the calories allowed. So the logging, what was most helpful. And of course, to keep up the log, I had to use my self-control thoughts that I generated through the devil's advocate technique on the habit addiction log. And I'd fallen off really even talking back to the thoughts. When I stopped logging, I stopped paying much attention to the self-control thoughts as well. And it just became a bit of a slippery slope.
I was thinking a little bit about the whole issue of relapse in the context of eating.
Yeah.
And I know that one of the things, and I guess people have talked about this till the cows come home, but that once when you've set your goal on losing weight, and when you've lost weight, then you say, I've achieved my goal. And now I can start eating the good stuff again. and now I'm all done with that awful dieting phase.
Yeah, right.
And that seems kind of like, not buying into that seems kind of like another death of the entitled pleasure-seeking self.
Right.
Because it's like, I thought I had a 6-week prison sentence, and now you're telling me it's a
lifelong.
Life. I'm a lifer. I'm going to be in this prison for the rest of my life. How does one cope with that terrible thought?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so true, David. It sounds really treacherous when you think of it that way. And even the way you tell this story speaks to just the power of our cognitions and our self-talk, our narrative about it, right? Because when we tell ourselves it's this prison sentence, of course, we're not going to want to keep it up, right? And I was just reviewing the last podcast we did, and it was so fun to hear myself talk about how it really doesn't have to be bad at all. There's so much delicious, lovely food that's healthy for you, right? And the reality that it doesn't have to be a prison.
glazed donuts and stuff like that?
Well, those are delicious too in moderation, right? Yeah, it's not. I surely don't fall into a camp that believes it has to be all or nothing, and that I can't ever
Right.
have some of those types of treats you're mentioning. But I also can enjoy other delicious treats. Like one of my favorite replacements for the calories in wine is like a sparkling water with like some fruit in it in a fancy glass, right? And it brings me actually just as much joy, right? So yeah, the idea that it's a lifelong prison is the problem versus a positive, healthy lifestyle that I choose every day. I choose, and I'd kind of fallen off of in that relapse. But you're right; that's the problem with those types of goals, that we hit a goal and then we think we're done, versus a process of continuously eating healthy, in my example, or whatever our audience might be struggling to change. Right? How do we come up with a lifestyle, long-term choice that works really well and you can celebrate?
I like how you say it's an everyday choice. Like every
Yeah.
day you're making a conscious choice.
Yes. Right. To do something good for me and my future and the future of the people I care about. Right.
And that includes the
Yeah.
tracking. So every day you're making the choice to track. And it seems like what you
Yeah.
were saying, that as you're tracking, you're also monitoring or paying attention to your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
they seem to go hand in hand with each other.
Mm-hmm. Right. I still, like anyone who's struggling to make a habit long term, I still get hit with all the old tempting thoughts, like that I deserve to take a break and that it's so stupid to have to be so rigid, right? I have to actively talk back to these, which is why when you're working on these methods, it's so important to write it down and record it and listen to it again, right? To remember and stay active. I think there's my reflection on my. Oh, go ahead.
Before we go on, can you say
Yeah.
those again? Because I only wrote down, I deserve to take a break. And what were some of the other tempting thoughts?
Yeah, I deserve lots of deservingness. Really, I deserve a treat, right? Like maybe I've had a hard day, and I deserve a treat. And then occasionally the tempting thought that it's silly to be so rigid. I should be able to eat whatever I want. Like that's a
Oh, wow.
powerful one, because I genuinely believe in like the flexibility and spontaneity of the human spirit is a beautiful thing. Right? It's part of
Yeah. Oh,
my
yeah.
values. Right. So those are ones that get me, that I have to actively talk back to. Yeah, they're powerful ones.
When you're talking back to them, do you do it out loud? Do you write them down? How do you do it?
Yeah, well, when I was in the heat of my relapse, I wasn't doing any of it, which is why I was relapsing. Right? But right now, again, because I'm clawing my way back out, I'm using my tools again. I'm actively doing it in my head, which works for me. I always like to picture two voices on my shoulders. A lot of us use this and teach this to our clients, where I picture the tempting voice on one shoulder, and then I picture my best self, which is my self-control thoughts, on the other shoulder, and I have them argue. So as soon as I hear that tempting voice, I label it like, oh, here we go. Here's the tempting voice. And then I talk back. Of course, I initially wrote it out, and I highly recommend, when it's a new skill to our listeners, that you always write it out. And you rewrite it and you rewrite it and you reread it, because you're memorizing, you're making those thoughts more accessible in your working memory so that you can access them more quickly. Right?
Yeah.
Coming up with a good self-control thought once isn't enough. It has to be active in your brain and be quickly accessible. Do you both agree with that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And before we go on, because I know you've got a lot of new stuff and awesome stuff to share, but could we just demonstrate the devil's advocate
For sure.
technique for our listeners? Because this
Yeah.
is a great one that any of you who are struggling with any kind of habit or addiction, if you write down the tempting thoughts, and particularly with say eating, picture yourself being tempted by whatever your favorite tasty food is. What would that be, Angela?
The brownie is always for me. It's always brownies.
Okay.
They're killer.
Okay.
And a glass of red wine together is even better.
Brownie plus red wine.
Yeah, that combo. What a lovely combination the world has given us in those two things.
Yeah, I've never heard of that combo before, but that sounds
Oh.
beautifully colored too, red and brown. That's kind of a nice picture or color combo. And could I
Very
talk?
fall for Thanksgiving.
So now, can you picture that brownie and red wine right in
I
front
see
of
it.
you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And could I talk to you for a minute, Angela?
Yes, you
You
can.
know who I am.
I think you're probably that tempting voice on my shoulder.
Yeah, and I just wanted to remind you that the bottom line is that you deserve to take a break right now, and you can just reach over with your fingers and touch that soft, luscious brownie, bring it up to your lips, and just take a little taste right now.
You're very, very seductive. It's tempting because it would be delicious. And I think I do deserve a break. I've had like a long day. I've accomplished a lot. It's fun to have something pleasurable. But the brownie and the red wine isn't the only way I can have a break. There's all kinds of other cool ways I can relax and even have some indulgence tonight. I can make a special drink that doesn't have calories, or I can do a little foot massage. Lots of ways I can do it without the regret of eating when I don't need the sugar right now and it's not good for me in the long run.
So who won that exchange?
I think I did. I mean, you still sound delicious, but no,
Yeah.
it felt like a big win. I feel like I was really in the right there and had a strong argument.
That was huge win.
Yeah, I think, yes, it was huge.
You want to take a turn, Rhonda? See if you can
Sure.
break it down.
Yeah, you might have beaten the thought, David's devil saying that you deserve this. But what I want to say is that I think that it's really silly to be rigid about your diet, Angela. It's just so silly to be rigid. I don't see you that way.
Yeah, you should be able to eat whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Oh, this one's harder for me, honestly, guys, but I can do this. I can do it. I do think there's value in flexibility and spontaneity and just finding joy in the moment. And food does bring that to me. But the truth is, that doesn't mean I have to overeat and put my health at risk. And so I can have a bit of these treats and fun, and that is flexible and spontaneous, and still honor my commitment to myself to make long-term healthy choices. Being a little bit more careful now actually will allow me to keep eating these fun things in the long term versus getting myself really seriously into type 2 diabetes and then having to restrict things more intensely. And so I don't have to lose all my fun and spontaneity. I can still be fun in other ways. I can get up and dance and tell silly jokes and be a goofball in all the ways that I normally am, and still hold myself to a high standard around my health.
So who won that one?
I did. Yeah.
Big or small?
It still feels like not as big as it probably needs to be. You caught me grappling at the beginning going, and I think that's still true. Like it's a hard one for me. I still don't feel like I'm totally batting that one out of the cage. And that's the one that gets me in like party environments, is like, I will still go over my calories and my logs sometimes in party scenarios because that thought is still getting me. So I don't think it's huge. I'm not knocking it out yet.
Okay. Do you want to do a role reversal with
Yeah.
Rhonda and see if Rhonda
Sure.
can be huge?
But let me ask you a question. I thought one of the things about tempting thoughts is that we don't do role reversals if we can't win.
Oh, okay.
Can't defeat it.
Catch, Rhonda. Good
Show us
catch.
the
Yes.
other direction then to go in, Rhonda. That's a great point you just made. I forgot.
Well, I'd say maybe, Angela, this isn't something that you really want to work on, and flexibility is more important than changes in your lifestyle or your eating, your dieting.
Yeah, and you've always been a spontaneous kind of person, and that's one of your core values. And this is your chance to be honorable and honor your values and just take a yummy bite of that beautiful brownie and a little sip of that red wine.
Or a few bites and a few glasses, right? Yeah, that's helpful. So you both are, just to name what you're doing, falling back, just open-handed paradox to kind of name that, yeah, maybe it's not worth it to me. And I think it is effective because it does make me want to fight harder, because this is definitely a goal I care about. I'm not going to just agree with that paradox and quit the goal. So yeah, let me try it again, because I feel very motivated to defeat this one in a more powerful way. Can you hit me with the tempting thought one more time?
You can hit her again, Rhonda.
Okay, Angela, it's so silly to be rigid about your diet. Embrace your flexibility. It's a core part of who you are, and it's such a beautiful part of who you are.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part of life. Embracing life. Eat that brownie.
Drink that glass of wine.
Yes. I feel very strongly that I can still be flexible and spontaneous and have fun without overeating. And I know that even my version of being careful with my eating builds in flexibility. I'm actually not rigid. I'm allowed to have all kinds of foods in moderation and be reasonable and just make careful choices. And so I think you're kind of full of BS when you tell me I can't be fun and flexible. And I know I've never once been at a party where someone had said, "Oh man, Angela, you're no fun anymore because you're not eating to the point that you feel sick and full." Or, "What's wrong with you? You're not on to your third glass of wine yet." Right. And so the truth is there's just no data that I can't be fun and flexible and spontaneous while still making reasonable choices. So screw you.
Okay, who won that one?
That was big. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was really helpful to have you remember, Rhonda, to go to the paradox and not be helpful, because it really motivated me. Like, come on, I can do this. I can fight this. I care. It's not a goal I want to quit on. Some people do admit they don't want to follow through with their goal, but for me, it's really one I care about. So that was really helpful.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
And before we go on, then, just to, because I've gotten more into how people need to have things spelled out in my old age. It's kind of hard for people to learn those things. What are the teaching points that we just brought to consciousness? Because the devil's advocate technique sounds kind of simple and fun, and it is all of those things. But what is the key to making it effective? Or what are the keys?
Do you want to take that, Rhonda, or did you want me to?
It doesn't matter. I can answer and then you can add to it. How about that?
Okay.
We really want the person to have their own motivation to make what are difficult choices. You're giving up something that gives you pleasure. So if you can't be motivated and defeat the thought hugely in our office, then you won't be able to do that at home when you're alone and you're smelling the brownie, or you're at a party and being offered a glass of red wine. And so that's why we don't do the role reversal.
So this is not only a helpful technique, it's a test of motivation.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Another teaching point I'll throw in is don't help. Now, what percentage of therapists will try to help?
100?
Probably 100. Yeah.
100. And why is that the same as suicide or homicide or whatever?
No.
Why does helping fail 100% of the time?
It kind of forces it forces people to resist us, right? When we try to help, it almost activates their brain into arguing the other side. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's right. And so the therapist should paradoxically be as seductive as possible when doing the devil's advocate, rather than kind of try to give a lame version of the tempting thoughts that the person can easily, shoot back. And then the most important thing was the one that you said, Rhonda, if the person can't get to huge, that means they're really not there. And so then, Rhonda, what should the therapist do? Should we do a nice role reversal and show them how to get to huge?
No, we should do what we just did and say, maybe this isn't something that you really want to work on, and that's okay. And embrace that and come with acceptance and compassion that this isn't a choice that they want to make right now, and that's okay. and see if they do exactly what Angela did. It was like, who put the brakes on? Wait a minute.
Yeah, that's right. That's cool. Well, let's go on with the new stuff. But that if we don't do anything more on this podcast, I think that was a great.
That was great. Yeah, thank you for that. It felt like a great motivation boost to me even now as I'm, working to get back to my goals. So, yeah. So in my kind of analysis of like what went wrong, how did I slide off of my really awesome process that was working so well? And I think I identified just through self-reflection kind of two main things. One is I just was like getting kind of overly confident, right? And this happens a lot for folks when they've made behavioral changes. In the addiction world, there's a term called the pink cloud, which is this kind of like optimistic, almost like naive energy sometimes that happens when people become sober from a substance, where they're feeling really optimistic and pleased, right? And it's actually a really vulnerable time. I think my optimism got out of hand much later, and where it shifted is I remember telling someone, they're like, "Oh, do you still track your food?" And I said, "No, I've actually gotten so good at doing it, I just hold it in my head." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you can ask me the calorie content of most things now, and I've tracked so long, I just kind of know, and so it's fine." And I look back on that moment, that was actually the beginning of my slide. I'd let go of a method that was really working for me, and kind of naively thought I'd keep it up. So the other part is we had not done, this is, I think, the most important, we had not done what we call relapse prevention. And those of you listeners who are TEAM CBT therapists hopefully know a lot about relapse prevention, and hopefully you do better for your clients than I did for myself and do this all the time. So I thought it'd be really awesome today to spend a little time reviewing what is the steps of relapse prevention and why do we do it? And one maybe kind of cool thing that came up that could be a transition for us to think about this is, I'd love to hear, Rhonda and David, your thoughts on this. So I had another therapist say to me recently when I was sharing with her that I'd had a bit of a relapse, and I shared this with her, and she kind of panicked. She said, "Angela, you're struggling after having used these tools. Does that mean that this stuff doesn't work?" Like she had this moment of like, are we selling something that is ineffective? Should I be doubting this approach? And I found myself kind of smiling real quickly, almost kind of having that chuckle of like, yes, such a common misconception. And I think we should talk about why is it okay to relapse? Why is it not something to worry about? Why do I not doubt the methods or tools, despite the fact that I actually fell off of them and did regain a bunch of weight in the process? Do either of you want to speak to that, or do you want me to share it? I'm talking too much, so.
Well, you've had your share of talking. Now I have too, so Rhonda's going to just
Well, I don't think recovery is linear. I think the path to recovery is often a journey that has setbacks, and relapse is a temporary obstacle that we all go through. It seems normal. And then what we do is just continuing to fall back to acceptance and observing what happened in the moment. Oh, I relapsed, and now I can go back and reuse the tools that I started on this journey in the first place that did work.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. I think one thing is that everybody relapses from everything. If you've been depressed and you go into a state of euphoria, which is what I like to see at the end of my 2-hour therapy sessions, that's not going to last. No one has the right to be happy all the time. And there's 100% likelihood that those negative thoughts and feelings will come creeping back in. And if you've prepared for it, you can handle it. It's not a big deal. But if you haven't prepared for it, you'll make that kind of disqualification statement. This proves the therapy didn't work. It was just a superficial Band-Aid. I need something deep. I have to go to psychoanalysis and explore my childhood or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that relapse prevention is critical with depression, with anxiety, with eating, overeating, with habits and addictions, with relationship conflicts, with everything. And that's part of acceptance, accepting the fact that as human beings, our lives are flawed, and we're not going to achieve perfection from any guru, no matter how fraudulent and dishonest they are. That is just the universe. That life is tough. But if
Right.
you have techniques that work for you and you prepare, you're in good shape. I remember when Matt May went into his practice initially. He did an intensive with a fellow from the East Coast who came out who would have very severe OCD, and he would have the intrusion of these horrific thoughts that he thought were extremely shameful, and he would hide from people. And he'd had a life of failed therapy, and lo and behold, he just blew it all away. And I don't know if you remember, if you were there, either of you, but we had him then come for his finale to the Tuesday group after the weekend with Matt, and kind of show how he had crushed these negative thoughts. And it was really a funny and fantastic thing. But then I remember after it, I said, now the last thing you have to do is relapse prevention therapy. I said it only takes about a half an hour, but and he started fighting me on it. And I said, no, you can't fight me on this. But, it doesn't take long, and it's all the difference in the world, because you are going to relapse. These thoughts, 100%, they will come back, and you've got wonderful techniques now that work for you, and you just have to practice, what you're going to do when you relapse. And he got very, very stubborn, and the bottom line was he refused to do it. And then he called me recently, which must have been 10 years later, and saying that he was actively suicidal.
Oh no!
And could I help him? And that's the kind of thing that happens if you deny your capacity. See, as humans, we have all kinds of capacities inside of us. And if you don't prepare for relapse when it comes, you'll be totally blown away, and you get disillusioned and give up. And so that's why the relapse prevention is absolutely mandatory. And when I was in clinical practice, or even to this day, I will never discharge a patient until we've done relapse prevention therapy. Jill and I did a live demo at a workshop, David and Jill live, about, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely blow away, but we did not have time to do relapse prevention training. So we're bringing her back.
Good.
And Rhonda graciously agreed to set up a Riverside for us, to where we can kind of have her practice the externalization of voices, talk back to the relapse thoughts that can come up, and do one technique, which was cognitive flooding, which we just didn't have time to do to kind of complete her enlightenment. And that little investment in an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure.
Right. Absolutely. I love that example on the summary, David, because it is so powerful. And that's where maybe the danger of me being my own therapist in this case. I didn't give myself the gift I would have given to my patients in doing it. I find that another thing you taught me early in my practice, David, is that if a client has relapsed, right, we leave treatment with a nice summary for them of what worked, right? They should have very clear notes, recordings of what worked and what they're committing to do to maintain their recovery. What are the things they're going to keep practicing and using over time? And that should be in writing. It should be recorded. It should be very clear. And they should have an agreement that when they start to feel bad again, in the case of anxiety or depression, or when they struggle with their habit change, that they're going to use those techniques and tools first and then call us secondary, right? And so my clients are invited to call me after they've tried to use their notes on what to do. And then if they're still struggling, that first call says, are you using your notes? Can you find the notes on what you were going to do with the relapse? Try those things. And then if you're still struggling, we're scheduling, right? And I find that we can pretty quickly get people back to feeling well again by using the same methods that worked for them before, as you mentioned, David. And sometimes just adding a bit of like a problem solution log, which is one of the TEAM methods to help figure out what maybe got in the way, what, in my case, I fell off the tracking. And so what's the solution to bringing back reminders, things like that. Simple solutions that we can find through this 2-column, list the problem, find solutions approach. But mostly they need to get back to the methods that worked.
Do you use the problem solution log
earlier in the show, for example?
Say that again.
David, I talked over you. Can you say that again?
I can only say these things once because they have to do with enlightenment, and I'm only allowed to pronounce them once. I was going to say, get back to the tools that work, like the ones we were using early in the show. And then if we want to dive into your fantastic relapse daily mood log, relapse prevention, we can do more practice with that right now, if you like.
Yep, let's do it.
Manja, do you use the problem solution log with every relapse prevention?
No, just if it's clear that some new things have popped up. Sometimes there's a new problem someone can identify, like maybe some new challenging thing happened in their life that changed their routines, that's making it harder. I chuckle one time I had a client fly in to do intensive therapy with me, and one of the most helpful things we did in the intensive was, from his perspective, a problem solution log, where he realized he could really turn around his academic success if he just packed his lunch in the morning. And this seems so silly and simple, but we found that by doing a problem solution log where he had to identify all the things that were getting in the way of him getting his schoolwork done, which was feeding his low self-esteem. And through a simple problem solution log, he said he's late to class, he misses class, and he was able to see a problem was not getting organized in the morning and, packing his lunch. That's always the joke that learning to pack his lunch, cured his depression, but the problem solution log is what really helped there. So I always just see it as an option if people are getting stuck. But the most important thing is returning to what worked before and maintaining those things, which is where I fell off. I stopped using my tools and now I'm using them again, right? I'm kind of clawing my way back, getting back to my methods and things here. But I thought we could do a bit of a show how we do a relapse prevention mood log. It can sound a bit theoretical. And generally what we do is we ask the person to imagine the time in the future. It could be tomorrow. It could be an hour. It could be, in my case, 2 years later, right? That you realize you've relapsed. And again, we have to define that for the individual. So if you're thinking about personal work or you're thinking about a client you work with, you'd say, what would be an example of a time where I've slipped up, I've fallen off, I feel bad again, or I've fallen back into an old habit. And so for me, the moment I'd like to be prepared for is that moment that I become aware that I'm like gaining weight again and I'm not logging my food. Right. And so it's like this awareness hits that I've stopped tracking or my weight has gone up, right? Maybe I can feel it in my pants changing or I see it on the scale. And those would be moments that if I'm not really prepared for, I may just slip into a deeper relapse. I may give up, right? And just feel like it's hopeless and stop trying. And I'd like to be like super prepared for that moment so that I can just get back on track. Does that make sense as the setup?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah. So then we'd ask a client, or if you're doing personal work as you listen to the podcast, you'd write out what are the thoughts you anticipate you're going to have in that moment. Especially we're digging here for the like kind of hopeless thoughts about treatment working or about being able to get back on track. Those are probably the most important ones that we're looking for. So I put together a list of them, and maybe we could, what do you think, share a few of those and then try it in a role play? Or how what do you think, David, would be the best way to demo this?
Yes, definitely. Uh-huh.
And would you also imagine how you felt when you relapsed?
And I will also be linking to this daily mood log in the show notes. So if you are interested in seeing it visually, you can just read the show notes which you can easily get to from if you're listening to the podcast. And then look at this daily mood log. It's not there at this moment, but it will be shortly after this recording, and it'll be available to you there at the time this podcast is broadcast, which I guess from your point of view is right now. It will be there right now.
Right. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And Rhonda, you were saying, of course, we'd want to acknowledge what are the feelings the person will have at that moment of relapse as well, right? Which is an important step on any mood log. And we'd want to do that in this case too.
So can I go over the feelings with you and you do the thoughts with David?
Sure.
So you had written in this cluster of sad, blue, depressed, down, unhappy that you thought you would be feeling sad and down.
Could I just stop you for a second here, Rhonda?
Sure.
Could we start at the beginning, the upsetting event? Can you describe that with Angela?
Sure. So this is like an anticipation of a moment in the future where I've relapsed. And so I'm imagining ahead to a moment that I step on the scale and I notice that I've gained some weight. And then it occurs to me that it's been days or weeks that I have not been logging my food. So I come to this realization of, oh my gosh, I've gained weight and I'm not logging my food. And this is what I'm going to feel in that moment.
Okay. And on a scale of 0 to 100, with 0 being you're not feeling at all sad and down, and 100 being you're feeling it as much as you possibly can, how much do you anticipate feeling sad and down?
I would guess like 50, not the worst sadness I've ever felt, but significant.
Yeah. And you didn't mark down that you would feel at all any kind of anxiety or anxious feelings?
No, probably not.
Mm-hmm. What else are you anticipating that you're feeling?
Yeah, I think the cluster of like the guilty, remorseful, bad, ashamed would be pretty strong. Feeling, guilty about not having stuck with my plan, probably in like this about 60%. Definitely some inadequacy in that moment, like beating myself up. I put 20% I anticipate there. And again, we're guessing ahead and doing this with our clients. They don't know exactly how they'll feel, but you probably have a pretty good estimate just by imagining, right? I don't think I'd be feeling like lonely or necessarily embarrassed, but definitely some discouraged and pessimistic around like 40%, frustrated and thwarted for sure, 40 or 50% there as well. And then some of that like annoyance, irritation with myself, and probably 50% there.
Okay, thanks. And do you want to go on, David?
Well, yeah, and then the next thing we want to take a look at is your negative thoughts, and because that's what we're going to practice talking back to with the externalization of voices. And the idea here is that getting that it's the thoughts about the relapse that are that's the poison. This is not a behavioral intervention to stop you from relapsing or to modify your behaviors, although that's certainly part of it. But to zap those negative thoughts in your brain that are triggering these negative feelings. And the paradox is we don't want you to be upset about the relapse. Why would that be, Angela?
Because it probably leads to hopelessness, which then would lead me to give up and be in a deeper relapse, right? It would go from like a lapse to like a deep relapse if I become hopeless about it and I kind of give up or quit.
Yeah. And then you want to read you've got these 7 excellent negative thoughts that you would have, the next time you notice a relapse.
Yeah, I imagine I'd be saying, 1, I shouldn't have let this happen. 2, I clearly am not strong enough to succeed at this long term. 3, it's too hard.
A little fast for me because I'm writing these down. And
okay.
You should write these down too.
Angela, how much did you believe that thought? I shouldn't have let this happen.
I'd anticipate I'd believe it 100% in that moment. I shouldn't have let this happen would feel 100% true in that moment. 2, I clearly am not strong enough to succeed long term. Probably like, I don't know if I'd believe that 100%. I'd guess like 60%. And maybe let's not do all 7. Is that okay? We're not going to have time to work on them all. Should I just pick a couple more, David, or do you want to hear all 7?
Well, I think people would love to hear them all.
Okay, let's do it. So number 3, it's too hard to restart tracking my food.
And then how strongly do I believe that one?
65%. I think I'd believe that.
Okay.
And then 4 is actually quite similar. I phrased it a little differently. It will be too painful to track and see what I'm really eating. That might sound silly, but part of the concept of tracking for me, the helpfulness is being honest with myself. And so when I've fallen off and I'm just eating whatever I want, it's pretty painful at first to write it all down, to admit, like, oh wow, I really went overboard there. So there's that. So I think I'd believe that 60% because it would be painful to restart when I've stopped.
I love that.
Yeah. 5 is this kind of, this isn't fair, righteous thing. This isn't fair. It shouldn't be so hard to be healthy. And then 6, I had
and you believe that pretty high, don't you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, 70%. I anticipate believing it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and remember, these are right now? No, not at all. But we're anticipating, and this is what you have to keep clarifying with the client. What do you think you'll believe that in the future? How strong will it be? And in a relapse, I think I'd believe that very strongly at 70%.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, the entitled pleasure seeking self.
Totally.
And by the reason why, by the way, the reason that it's hard to look at what's going on is because of the positive distortions that are involved in triggering the overeating and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, listeners should go look for the list of those if they haven't seen them. They're really helpful to keep in mind. So number 6, I is screw it. I could just be more accepting of myself and not bother with these goals. So it's a hopeless giving up thought there. And if I were relapsing, I'd probably believe that 40%, not as strong, because I anticipate feeling mixed about giving up even in that moment. And then my last thought was about you all listeners. I wrote down anticipating, because I've had this one before, is, that, all those podcast listeners will be so judgy that I've regained some weight. And I actually, because I guess I love these listeners and know many of them, I said I only anticipate believing that 10%, but it surely would be a thought that would pop into my head.
Yeah,
it's such a lovely community.
We can have a feared fantasy with that if we have time, if you're interested.
Yeah.
Okay, these are beautiful. What should we do now, Angela? Should we do externalization of voices with them?
Yeah, right. Because if we're really preparing me for a future relapse, remember, again, I'm kind of back on track. I've kind of clawed my way out of this last relapse. I'm back to tracking. I'm not being perfect at it, but I'm getting pretty consistent at tracking again now for quite a few days. I'm actually doing pretty well at getting back to healthier eating. So we're preparing ahead, and we want me to be able to defeat these thoughts if I relapse again, so that it can be an even shorter period next time. I want to keep making that smaller and smaller periods of relapse. I didn't do this last time, so my relapse was dragged on a lot longer than I would have liked. It took quite a while for me to admit what was going on and come back. So I'd love to have a solid rebuttals here ready to go for next time.
One of my pet peeves with therapists, and I have a lot of them, and when I publish them on YouTube, people kill me. They don't like my criticisms. But one thing I love about what you did here is you did this on paper, and these are your relapse daily mood logs, and these are unique to you, Angela. Mm-hmm. And so when we work on this, we're working on the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This is the pure thing. And my pet peeve is therapists who don't ask patients about their thoughts, and they're using some behavioral thing. The person has a symptom, and then they're told some formula to help that. And it seems, just to be kind of naive and not terribly helpful above and beyond a placebo effect. But I love this, and all relapse should be done prevention with a written daily mood log of how you're going to feel at the time when you relapse, and do it ahead of time when you're still feeling good, and then use externalization of voices to blow these suckers out of the water. And so before we do the externalization of voices, maybe Angela or Rhonda could just give our podcast fans a quick reminder of what is the externalization of voices.
Well, I can do that too, or Angela, if you can. So externalization of voices is one of the most powerful tools, and I believe it's one of the first tools that you created, where we're attacking the person with their own thoughts and giving them the opportunity to defeat the thoughts in a huge way. And the way they can defeat the thoughts is, I think of it as 4 different ways. You can use self-defense and argue against the thought. You can find some acceptance in the thought, and that's kind of a spiritual path. You can counterattack the thoughts, or you can use a combination of all 3. And remember, it's not each of us as individuals that are attacking our client. We're attacking them with their own thoughts that they've shared with us and written down in their daily mood log.
And you mentioned that we're going to attack Angela with her thoughts. But let me ask you, Angela, who is the we in Rhonda's excellent summary? You gave an excellent overview, but you didn't really explain what externalization of voices is. Who is going to be attacking Angela with her thoughts?
Well, the therapist, David and I, in this case, are going to be attacking Angela with her thoughts.
No, not really. Let me ask you that question, Angela. Who will we be? What is the name?
Oh,
what will my name be?
I think I would have answered like Rhonda, but now I know where you're going. So Rhonda, give me a hint. It's our own negative thoughts that the therapist is just portraying, right? So it's the client, in this case, Angela's own negative thoughts that she has to talk back with. Again, we could go back to picturing voices on the shoulder of a negative and a positive voice, right? And so the therapist can bring to life that negative voice. We might actually switch roles at some point in this role play. We could do that and let the client even start with the negative thoughts. I like to just have the therapist make it harder and make the client do the hard work of coming up with the positive rebuttals. So.
Yeah, right. So Rhonda and David will have a new name during this exercise, and will be the negative Angela.
Right.
And Angela, you will be playing the role of the positive Angela, and that's massively important, because this is not an assertiveness training thing whatsoever, where we're different people attacking Angela. We're Angela attacking Angela. So should we go ahead and kick it off, Angela?
Yes, let's do it.
You want to take the first shot, Rhonda, a.k.a. Negative Angela.
Okay. And Angela, if you were in my office, I would ask you, is there one thought that you'd like to start with that is perhaps one that might be the most challenging or the most painful? Or should we just start at number 1 and work our way down?
I actually think number 1 is a really hard one. So yeah, let's start there.
You anticipated feeling that 100%. So that is one that feels really strong and powerful. Mm-hmm. So Angela, I'm just going to ask you, remember, who am I?
You're my negative voice at the point of relapse.
Yes. Okay. And who are you?
I am my helpful, positive voice. So I'm still me, my best self.
So Angela, you've relapsed, and you really shouldn't have let that happen.
Yeah, I wish I had not let it happen, but I don't think it's fair to say I shouldn't have, because I am human, and I don't know any humans who are perfect all the time. And actually being compassionate with myself, that life is a journey that has bumps, is a much better way to just get back on track. And so kind of using that harsh should statement is just going to make me feel more hopeless and down and keep me from getting back to my goal, which I'm perfectly capable of doing. So shut up, should voice, you're not helpful. this has happened and I'm human and I'll get back to work.
And who won that? The negative Angela or the positive Angela?
Positive. I think it was a huge win because it's just that like kind of compassionate. I used a little bit of that semantic technique instead of saying should, I wish it had not happened. That's true. That will always be the case, but feeling really clear that it's not helpful to make myself feel bad, and it's better to just remind myself to get back to work on the things that worked before. So it felt like a big win.
Yeah.
And yes, it was beautiful. And you also slipped in a very nice counterattack technique.
Yeah. I was going to say that too, Angela. You used compassion and acceptance. You defended yourself. You used the counterattack, and then you, like you said, you used the semantic technique. So that was very beautiful and well done.
Cool. Yeah, it felt easy and genuine.
And everything that you said, how much do you believe what you said?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
This is why we do this when you're not in the middle of relapse, right? Because right now it's like easy and powerful, and I need to have this written down so I have it if I struggle in the future, right? It's so fun to see.
Could I talk to you for a minute, Angela?
Please. Yes.
You know who I am.
Yes, you're my negative voice at the time of relapse.
Yeah, and I know you beat that other negative Angela there just now. But you're not going to beat this one, because I just want to let you know something that's a fact of the universe that you need to accept. And that's you're just not strong enough to keep up this ridiculous, constant, endless tracking, on the long-term basis. So you're just weak and you're not strong enough, and you cannot defeat me, because this is the fact.
I think you're wrong. I think that I am strong enough, and the truth is your colorful language is unhelpful, because it's really not actually even that hard what I'm asking myself to do. I am capable or strong enough to spend 60 seconds 3 times a day entering what I ate. It's not that hard, and I am capable, and actually I feel better when I'm making healthy eating choices. So I don't think it's true. And I also need to give myself credit that I actually have succeeded for longer periods than I ever would have imagined, and really enjoyed those periods and found them good. So it's not at all true that I'm not strong enough. And I think anyone who can do a hard thing for a day can probably do it for 2 days. And so I just get back to it.
Okay, who won that one?
I did. Big.
Big or small?
Huge.
Big? Oh, huge. Okay. What made it huge?
I liked a bit of the self-defense, some specific data. And I think it's true, in my case, I succeeded for like 2 years of tracking. That's a long time. But in other people's cases, they may have succeeded for 3 hours or for 2 days. And that's evidence too, right? We have to honor what we've done to prove it to ourselves. And then reminding myself that the big colorful language of like implying it's so hard is just not true. There's so many distortions there. So I was more specific and kind of reminding myself that I can do it.
Yeah, we could go into those distortions too, like discounting the positive and emotional reasoning and self-criticism and a hidden should statement and all or nothing thinking. But I have a question for you, Angela, because you're obviously not only a wonderful person but a brilliant person, and you had gotten sucked into believing this thought 60%. That's clearly a fraudulent thought, that you're not strong enough to keep this up over the long term, whatever the definition of the long term is. And what do you make of that? And you might not make anything of it, but like you're very smart and you were believing these messages, which we can now see are just complete bullshit.
Right.
How did that happen?
It's a great question because, yeah, I was in relapse for I don't know how long of a time to put on it because I was in this kind of weird phase of like not following and knowing I was gaining weight, not making any change. And I was telling myself this stuff. And I don't know. I don't know. David, do you have any insight about that? I'm not sure I can see my own my my own rationale there.
I'm not sure, but I've often felt that different emotional states are like states of self-hypnosis, and that we
Yeah.
really are go into trance states. Like
Hmm.
depression is a kind of trance that we're in,
Hmm.
telling ourselves all these negative things about ourselves that aren't really true, or certainly
Hmm.
not entirely true.
Right.
And then and the whole addiction world too, we're in a different kind of trance. The trance that's saying I need this red wine and brown sticky yummy brownie, and I need it now.
Right.
And we're just in a state of hypnosis, and you could argue that recovery is like waking up from a
Hmm.
hypnotic trance, and there's different trances. The depression trance is very different from the anxiety trance. That's very
Hmm.
different from the habit and addiction trance, and that's very different from the relationship, conflicted relationship. It's all your fault
Right.
type of trance. But and that's not necessarily an explanation, but it's a kind of a metaphor that has always made sense to me. Now, Michael Yapko was on the program, and he's just a wonderful person, a great hypnotist, and creative therapist, and wonderful teacher, and just all around good guy. But I asked him about this theory, and he got very angry with me, and I
Oh,
never
okay.
found out why. And Rhonda might understand it better. And I'm not trying to activate an argument or something like that, but
Sure.
it's just something that appeals to me, and it has for years now. It's come more and more into focus, over the past, let's say, 10 or 15 years.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're saying. I'm not familiar with your guest view on it, so can't speak to that. But I love the idea of I do think I was in a bit of a kind of sleepy trance when I started relapsing, where I was just beating myself up and kind of believing the hopelessness, like I'm not strong enough, I shouldn't have let this happen. And there's zero helpfulness in that for me. I'm not motivated by berating myself. It's never worked for me. So for some people, they say that's motivating. For me, like compassion and reminders of like my abilities and my strengths have always been motivating. And you hear like today, when I'm in this enlightened place, I'm easily able to do that. But when I was relapsing, this stuff felt true. So I love the power that having this written down from our work today, it's like next time I just have to have a system to look at this stuff if I mess up. Right? I just have to, so that I don't have to remember all these thoughts on my own. I have them here to look at and get myself going again. It's such a
Angela,
gift.
would you ever re-listen to this podcast to listen to
Yes. Oh,
yourself
for
talking
sure.
back to
Yeah.
these
Right.
thoughts? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and actually that is listening to the first one we did was helpful for me when I really started realizing, oh, I'm struggling again. I was like, oh, let me go listen to that podcast, right? And that kind of got me already turned around. Listening to this one will likely turn me around real quickly.
Yeah, well, we're into the gold, and we're a little short on time because one of the
Yes,
things in our poll, they said you have to have shorter podcasts,
I
which
know. Let's wrap up. This is great.
difficult for me because everything I say is so important, and there's so much of it, so I can't
It
keep
is.
my mouth shut. But let's fly through these last
Let's
five.
just do one more and then wrap it up because people will get the idea, and I can be given homework to do
Okay,
the rest on
okay,
my own. Does
sure,
that sound good?
sure. Well,
Okay.
this is you're up to bat then, Rhonda.
Angela, do you want to pick the next one? Or do you want to just do
Um,
number three?
yeah, let's do number 7 because it's about the podcast listeners and that'd be fun. So
Okay.
let's defeat that one.
Yeah, well,
Angelina,
then we can do Feared Fantasy also.
David and Rhonda might be really nice to you because you're a sweet person, but all the podcast listeners are going to be really judgy if they found out that you regained some of the weight.
And they are going to find
Mhm.
out, and they're going to send you hate emails and things like that.
Yeah, I will have some acceptance. There could be like a very small handful of people who have a sense of judgment. And the truth is, I will let them have that, because I do believe for sure today that the majority of the listeners, if anything, will feel glad to be told that this is real life and that I'm not perfect and that relapse is inevitable and normal. And I imagine most of them will see that as a gift, just like the therapists I've already shared this journey with, who have learned about relapse prevention through my journey. And so my best self anticipates that actually people will feel grateful and connected, maybe even like me more, because at that first podcast, I sure sounded like I had it all together. I was rocking it, They may have felt a little distant from me because of that. Maybe I made it sound too easy to do these things and they couldn't relate. So I think it's kind of the opposite than what that sad thought tells me, and that people actually will be grateful.
Mm. Well, who won that?
I think I did. Yeah. I don't know. David looks skeptical because David's thinking, oh no, they're going to judge now.
Did you win big or small?
I think I won really big. Yeah. It feels
huge?
Like a big win to me. Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. That's beautiful. So let's pull this together. The teaching points from the podcast is that, we've had for, I would guess 30 years at least, maybe 45 years. I can remember when I created this habit and addiction log and the devil's advocate technique, but there are certainly very powerful ways to deal with the temptations and the new triple paradox technique. Really powerful methods now that are radically different from most people in the addictions universe. The techniques they're still stuck on 12-step programs and things like that. That certainly have some value, but this is like lightning compared to those things. But that'll only bring you into getting off of your alcohol or your food or your whatever your procrastination, whatever the problem is. But sooner or later, you're going to relapse. You're human. Those temptations will return. And now what you've given us today, Angela, is a wonderful specific plan and program for relapse prevention for habits and addictions. And if you could just make it very simple and just tell us what are the main teaching points here that people who would like to, who are working as therapists with people with habits and addictions or working on your own habit or addiction, how should we do this relapse prevention?
Sure. Let's keep it super simple. So I'd suggest that when you have a client who's made progress and they're in action with their new habit, right? So they're actually behaving in the way that as they had set their goal, then we need to do an anticipatory mood log where they imagine the first moment in time that they fall out of their habit or relapse, right? And that anticipatory mood log will include all the thoughts of what it means to have relapsed, right? What are they telling themselves about it? And of course, including all the feelings, as Rhonda guided us through today. And then we want to do externalization of voices with these thoughts so that they can write down and record and have record to look back on when that relapse really happens. So we're normalizing that relapse is likely or almost inevitable, and we're preparing them for what to do. And then I'd go just a step beyond that mood log and also have them write out what is their plan of what else do they need to do in that moment. So they're going to review this relapse prevention mood log. Under what conditions should they call their therapist again or reach out to other supports? You'll know you will know this client well in their unique situation and can be thinking about what are the factors that would get them back on track? And they should have that all written out and ready to go so that they can look at this, or you can point them to look at it if they do call you. And that's pretty simple, right? And as you said, it doesn't even take a long time. It's a brief necessary part of treatment being successful.
And I might mention number 3 on the relapse prevention list is don't fall into the positive distortion that your goal is to lose weight, for example.
Right.
the goal is to change your approach to eating. And in your case, Angela, one thing that's key is to track your food. For other people, it might be something
else. Yeah,
but that's totally key. And you have your beautiful notes that we'll put in the show notes. And you mentioned, stimulus control and a lot of things. But the point is, have a plan to adhere to after you've finished your acute phase of the treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's it. And if people want to go back to that first podcast to learn more about process versus outcome goals, again, it was number 270. And for therapists who, I'm just remembering that for therapists who want help in general learning and practicing these methods, we're pretty excited about the fast track course that Feeling Good Institute has now that takes people through lots of practice of techniques and is open to anyone in the therapist world who wants to get really good at these techniques. So lots of opportunities in our community to learn and grow. So.
And Angela, when you're talking about relapse prevention, as David said, you're not just talking about it with a habit or an addiction. This is a technique can be used if someone has overcome depression or anxiety.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're giving a plug to the fast track training. If any of you are listening or therapists, I know that many of you are, maybe most of you are. That's just a killer program that you're running 2 or 3 times a year now. It's like a many-month training program to where you really get good at techniques like the externalization of voices. And if somebody is interested in that, what should they do to find out about it?
Yeah, thank you. Go to the Feeling Good Institute website. Specifically, we have a specific website, fasttrackcbt.com, just for that course, because it's such a cool, popular course, fasttrackcbt.com. But yeah, there's also, we know many times on the podcast, we've talked about all the different great training opportunities in our community. So keep practicing and learning, and these techniques do take repetition to get them right. And I'm case in point as a therapist who teaches other people to do it. I still even made a mistake when I applied it to myself and forgot to do all my relapse prevention. So keep practicing. We'll get good together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rhonda. Any last words from Angela or Rhonda?
Just really thank you so much, Angela, for coming and sharing your journey and sharing your wisdom with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Cool. And thanks for the help today. I'll finish up my homework and I'm looking forward to using it. So take care. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye, Angela. And goodbye. Thank you for listening. We love you all.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.